All right, it's 101. I'm going to get us started. Thank you all so much for joining this webinar to talk about the Michigan Home Energy Rebate Program and focus on for contractors who are hoping to get a bit more information about the program, as well as some Q&A. I'm Grace McKenzie. I'm with the Institute for Energy Innovation and the Michigan Energy Innovation Business Council. We are a trade association and also a research nonprofit that works in the advanced energy space. Real quick, before I pass it on to the experts, I just wanted to do a bit of a logistics background. Um, Any time throughout this webinar, if you have any questions for the speakers, please use the Q&A function. If you are having trouble with that at all, feel free to send the panelists a question. I can also make sure it gets shared through that function as well. But we're going to wait for all of our questions for the end, and there's going to be a moderated Q&A session with David Gard, who's with us as well. And then quick agenda here, we'll start off with a presentation and overview of the program with EGLE, and then we'll move on to some more in-depth focus on contractor certification and the training process with Clear Result and Walker Miller. And again, we'll finish up with that Q&A. So I'm gonna, without further ado, get us started here with Julie Staveland, who's the Assistant Division Director at EGLE.
Awesome. Thanks, Grace. Hi, everybody. Julie Staveland, Assistant Division Director of the Materials Management Division at the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes Energy. So in a nutshell, I get to oversee the amazing teams within energy, pollution prevention, and recycling. We provide technical assistance and grants to businesses and communities across the state, really working towards sustainability and resiliency. And I also, Grace, take the slides back because it's not working for me. Sorry, guys, technical difficulties on my end. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and apparently my internet is not liking me today. If you can go back to the previous slide. Thank you. Just wanted to finish this one up. So within our three programmatic areas, all of our programs work towards the goals that were stated within the My Healthy Climate Plan. And one of the goals that was identified within the My Healthy Climate Plan was the decarbonization of residential buildings. And with that came the timely rollout of the home energy rebate programs. Next slide. So the home energy rebate programs are two programs that were released from the Federal Department of Energy. Section 50121 is the home efficiency rebates. These are targeted towards whole home energy savings, similar to what you would see in weatherization type programs. Really looking at targeting of reducing the energy consumption of the home by 20% is the ideal range, with a max consumer rebate of approximately $20,000. The other program, Section 50122, is the home electrification and appliance rebates. This is geared towards electrification of most of the appliances within a home. This is targeted towards specific items as well as, some other broad areas that are included in the program. But typically this covers the appliances that we'd think of like heat pumps, HVAC systems, stovetops, electric wiring, and breaker box upgrades as well. Between these two programs, each is about a little over $105 million. So between the two, about $210 million that Michigan is going to receive. Between these two funding pots, we're estimating that we'll serve approximately 15,000 homes across the state. And I've listed the links here for EGLE's website on the rebate program, as well as the application portal for residents and the contractor portal for contractors that are interested in participating in the program. Next slide. Back in 2022, once the Department of Energy announced the rollout of this funding, Governor Whitmer released Executive Directive 2209. This essentially and wanted to ensure that EGLE, who is going to be the recipient of the home energy rebate funds, coordinated with other residential housing programs within the state, such as through Department of Health and Human Services, the Michigan Public Service Commission, Michigan State Housing Development Authority, to ensure that we were not duplicating efforts, leveraging funds to the fullest extent, and ensuring that we were serving our residents equitably across the state. Next slide. So I'd like to give a broad overview of kind of like the behind the scenes bureaucracy of how these federal program flows through the state. Because originally, when DOE announced the program, when the Inflation Reduction Act legislation passed, that was in August of 2022. So once that information came out, the funding, got designated to the Department of Energy. Department of Energy had to come up with the rules and regulations for the states to apply for. So DOE released the early planning dollars, instructions on how to apply and receive funding in the spring of 2023, with full program instructions in August of 23. So there was almost a full year between when the IRA legislation passed, between how the states could actually apply for the full funding. So Michigan jumped right on it. We submitted our application for the early planning dollars in July of 23. We got our award about 4 months later in November. Once we had the funding, we issued an RFP for planning consultants for both programs, which opened in December. We did a quick turnaround time. I'm sure you guys are familiar working with governments that sometimes we're not the fastest animals, but we tried to move as quickly as we could. We had contracts signed for our planning consultants in March of 24 and immediately began our virtual and in-person stakeholder engagement across the state, talking to contractors, residents, community action agencies, local governments, really trying to flush out the design for the program. As we were doing our early planning, we were working on all of the elements required for the full application to submit to DOE. We submitted our application to DOE in May of 24, and we received our award in July. Once we had our full award, we put out an RFP to solicit a statewide implementer who would be responsible for the execution of running the program, which we brought them on board, which is Clear Result, who we'll be talking here in a moment, in August of 24. After that, we jumped right into planning and getting the rollout for the program design that we had done through all of our stakeholder engagement prior in the year. We launched our pilot in the fall of 2024, wrapping that up here in the early spring, and we just announced our full statewide launch in April of 2025. That was announced by Governor Whitmer at the My Healthy Climate Conference. So this is where we're at right now, right? We're about a month in of the full statewide launch. There's been a ton of interest. We've had a lot of excitement around the program, and that's why we're super excited to be talking to you guys today because we need more contractors to participate in the program. And the one thing that we're really hoping for through the life of this program is to really look at market transformation in terms of energy efficiency and electrification throughout our residential buildings to really try and achieve our decarbonization goals for the residential building stock. Next slide. So broad overview, I'm just going to give you a broad overview because Clear Result and Walker Miller are going to do a little bit more of a deeper dive. So essentially, EGLE acts as the fiduciary, right? We receive the funds from Department of Energy and then we pass through to our statewide implementer. We can't do this program without contractors and our utilities as well. So it's kind of like this beautiful Venn diagram of how we're going to roll this program out. Essentially, residents apply to the program, they're accepted, approved. They have an assessment or a baseline done about their home. Every home is unique. We know that not every upgrade is going to be working for every home, so we want to ensure that we're doing the correct upgrades for that home. Once the audit's done or assessment's done, and we identify what energy efficiency or electrification measures are appropriate for that home, the plan is kind of gone over with the resident. We ensure we have the rebates available. The energy efficiency upgrades or electrification upgrades are done. Project is complete. We verify on our end, make sure we provide the appropriate resources and follow up and wrap up with the customer. And then we continue to do the data measurement and tracking. Super broad overview. I'm going to be looking to Jason and David to go into the details more on this one. Next slide. I think that was it for my slides, right? Hands over to Jason now, maybe.
Sorry, it was
Oh, nope, I have
taking
three
me a
more.
second
Sorry,
to
nope, I have
bring
three
it up.
more. Sorry. So in terms of this program, right, I said we could only serve about 15,000 homes throughout the state. Michigan has over 4 million residential building residences across the state. So 15,000 is less than 1%. So we're targeting these funds to the homes that need it most, to the residents that need it most. So right now we're targeting our low to moderate income. Anyone who is at that market rate or above that moderate income threshold, we're kind of putting them on a waiting list where we'll reevaluate program options in 2026 to see if we open it up to the market rate customers. We're also looking at targeting those older homes, right? Not the new builds that already should be energy efficient, but those homes that really are in need of the energy efficiency upgrades. Right now, we're focused on single family, but we will be phasing in multifamily here in the near future. And then really targeting those energy efficiency upgrades that'll save us the most energy, right? In terms of heating and cooling upgrades. And then looking at those easy wins in terms of air sealing and insulation upgrades. Next slide. We also are wanting to ensure that we have equitable distribution of funding across the state. So we split the state into 11 districts that matches EGLE's districts across the state. And the funding is allocated in a 1/3 basis, right? So 1/3 is a base allocation that every region gets the same amount. The other 2/3 are based on that district's energy burden income and their low income percentages. Next slide. And then the contractors. This is the most important part. Once you're a certified contractor, you're eligible in the program to participate through the home energy rebate program. Assessments are done, making sure that we match the assess or the rebates to the home. Ensuring that the warranty paperwork is filled out correctly. And then we'll be looking at implementing recycling of the materials of the homes. Because the other thing that we really want to ensure is that we're looking at this big picture, right? It's not just the energy savings are. We want to ensure that we're also being responsible with the materials that we're pulling out of the homes and disposing and recycling them properly. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason, who is going to talk about this from the clear result.
Everybody. My name is Jason Relitz. I am an associate program manager for the MiHER program. I do work for the implementer Clear Result. And we are going to jump right into the customer journey. All right. I'll just let you know next slide. Okay. Yeah, I was having trouble pressing the down button. Um, so we do have specific goals through the Michigan Home Energy Rebate Program. So EGLE has identified the following guiding principles to shape design, structure, implementation, and desired outcomes of the MiHER program. So we are looking for statewide equitable participation, streamlined and efficient, a streamlined and efficient program, uh, consistent customer and contractor satisfaction, to access to low income and disadvantaged communities, and to improve comfort and decarbonize homes. Uh, we have specific goals in carbon emissions, energy efficiency, home electrification, and to educate the customers on their home and to really promote continual energy conservation. Um, we are dedicated to serving customers of all income levels, but specifically dedicated to serving disadvantaged communities, less than 80% AMI in alignment with the Justice 40 initiative. Next slide. Perfect. And as Julie was mentioning earlier, we have equitably distributed this funding across 11 districts or regions that do cover the entirety of the state of Michigan. And as mentioned before, again, we are dedicated to serving disadvantaged communities. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a breakdown. You can see the map on the right, and you can get an idea of where those regions are divided. Next slide, please. Perfect. Thank you. And next slide, onto the customer journey. So what kind of homes qualify for the MiHER program? Specifically primary homes. So a homeowner can apply for their primary homes only. Secondary homes do not qualify. We all know somebody with a cabin up north or a second home somewhere on the beach. Those homes unfortunately are not going to qualify. We do need it to be specifically a primary home for the customer. We do also serve condos. They qualify for the program. There may be additional permission from that specific HOA if the work's going to be performed to the outside of the building or to the outside appliances, specifically ACs and or heat pumps. But we do service condos, and then as well as renters. So qualified renters may participate in the program, and we'll have to agree to a landlord-tenant agreement. This applies to single family renters as well as multifamily homes. And as Julie mentioned, there's going to be more to come on multifamily. Next slide. All right, and here is the specific MiHER customer journey. We'll walk you through this briefly. So the first thing the customer is going to do to launch their participation in the MiHER program is they're going to submit an application. And this is going to go into the MiHER customer qualifying portal. The application is then verified by the MiHER program team, reviewing general customer information, income levels, making sure that they do meet the requirements to qualify for our program. If the application is approved, the customer is then going to schedule a home energy assessment with a registered MiHER contractor. That's really important. Must be a registered MiHER contractor. The contractor will then perform an energy assessment. They're going to produce an energy report and submit their required documents into the MiHER contractor portal. This submission will then be reviewed again by the MiHER program team for approval. The next step is the work. The work's then completed. This is in accordance to MiHER standards, DOE standards, SWS standards, BPI standards. There are a lot of different standards that we are holding contractors to when it comes to completing work. We want to make sure that, again, this is a viable project for every customer. After the work's completed, the customer is going to sign off on the project and post-verification work is then scheduled. We have QA/QC individuals in the program that will come out and verify the work that has been completed in the home. Again, we have specific standards that the program or each project must be held to. And these quality assurance individuals, that's their job. They're going to hold each contractor to the standards of the MiHER program. The contractor, after the work is done, the contractor then submits the required documentation in for payment. The MiHER program team then reviews that and either approves or denies it. If approved, the project is then goes to EGLE. It's reviewed and approved, and then the contractor gets paid. That is the customer journey. I believe next we're going to go into the contractor journey or roles of the contractors, and I'm going to pass it off to David Becker.
Cool. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, David Becker with Walker Miller Energy Services, Program Manager on the Michigan Home Energy Rebates Program. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the areas that both Julie and Jason touched on regarding the role of the contractor. I know most of you are here to learn a little bit more on what that role looks like for all of you. So first, just like a general contractor overview. On the program, there are two types of contractors, a primary contractor and a supporting contractor. A primary contractor is really the contractor who is responsible for submitting all of the paperwork that Jason just touched on. So the primary contractor, in most cases, would be that first point of contact with the customer, and they'd be responsible for either conducting the home energy assessment or finding a supporting contractor to conduct that assessment to initiate the project. The primary contractor would then be responsible for submitting the paperwork for that first proposal to approve the scope of work. And then after the work is completed, they'd be responsible for submitting the paperwork again with all the invoices and the customer sign-offs and whatnot to the program team for approval. And then they'd be the ones who would receive the rebate directly from EGLE for the work that was done. And then it'd be the primary contractor's responsibility for paying the supporting contractors who help that work. So in some instances, that primary contractor may only do HVAC work, or maybe you just do home energy assessments, and you'd be outsourcing the rest of the work to other electricians or plumbers or whoever else you need on that job to supporting contractors. A primary contractor could also serve as a supporting contractor on a job. So, it could be, again, if you're a primary contractor, your focus is HVAC and someone pulls you onto a project as a supporting contractor, you could also enter a project that way. And so when you first register for the program, you can choose whether or not you would like to be a primary contractor or a supporting contractor. And there's different paperwork for the different roles there. So for a primary contractor, I'd say the two biggest items is that you have to have your federal unique entity identifier, your UEI number, and you also have to have your state SIGMA number. Those are the two. Those are the two primary items that are needed in order to receive payment for the jobs to receive those rebates through the state. Um, and in addition to that, contract requirements generally would need to provide, as Julie mentioned, that 1 year warranty on all work performed. You're going to have to provide your business licenses, proof of insurance, your liability, automobile, workers' compensation, your financial information, so W-9 form with your EIN number, and then sign off on the program T's and C's. In addition to documentation of criminal background checks for all employees who will be entering homes. Um, and Contractors accepted the program must commit to have a minimum of one employee complete a yearly virtual training on the program as well. The other piece on the program in order to be approved is attending a training session. So there's a required training session through the program that we provide at Walker Miller. Usually it's about an hour long each week, and we are offering those weekly. We also offer additional support once you are an approved contractor in the program as well. We have office hours and roundtable times for you to ask any questions to the program team to make sure you all are supported. But yeah, all this information will be entered on the website. I'll show you a way to access that on a following slide here. And then any contractor certifications as well. So depending on what type of contractor you are, depending on your trade, you'd have to provide the team with that documentation. And again, all those forms are submitted online through our contractor portal. Pretty straightforward here. I guess the only thing is on the energy auditors, I'll call out BPI Building Analyst Professional, ResNet, Luna Auditor or WAP Level 1 or Level 2 Inspector are the types of certifications that are currently allowable to conduct the home energy assessments for the homes rebates portion to the BPI 2400 standard. So I know Julie touched on this briefly, but there are these two rebate pathways in the program. The Home Efficiency Rebates Program that we refer to as HOMES, and the Home Electrification and Appliance Rebates Program, which we'll refer to as HERE. You can leverage both on a project. In fact, a lot of times we encourage it just to make sure we're getting as much as we can into that home. As we mentioned, the majority of this funding is intended for households at less than 80% of the area median income, AMI. The only thing with homes in here is you can't use them for the same measure. So you'll notice on the here side, we have a rebate for, let's say, the electric heat pump HVAC at $8,000. On the home side, we also have funding for a heat pump. You wouldn't be able to leverage both for the same heat pump in that instance. So you'd have to keep them separate in that regard, but you could always just do a heat pump from here and do weatherization on homes or vice versa. The home side is, as I mentioned, with that BPI 2400 assessment, that modeled assessment is going to dictate the amount of energy savings potential in that home, which in turn dictates the level of rebates that are accessible for that household. So as the chart shows here, if the home is less than 80% AMI with a savings potential of 20 to 34%, that maximum rebate amount would be $12,000. And if you're able to achieve a savings percent, this is a modeled savings of 35% or higher, you'd have access to $20,000 in rebate for that customer. Now for moderate income, that's 80% to 150% AMI. Those amounts go down quite a bit. So for 20 to 34%, you have access to $2,000, and for 35 and above, access to $4,000 in rebates. And that's up to 50% of the project cost for moderate income. So again, quite different between the two, and that's why there's such a focus on those households that really need this the most. The here side is based on a measure approach. So it's more prescriptive basis. So each measure has its own rebate amount, and that's a fixed rebate amount. And the amount you're seeing on this chart here, those are the maximum rebate amounts per measure. That's for households at less than 80% AMI. and households at 80 to 150%, the moderate income can receive up to half of these amounts for 50% of the project cost. So for a household that's receiving a heat pump at $8,000, that could be fully covered if they're less than 80% AMI. But if they're a moderate income customer, they'd receive up to $4,000 for that heat pump. And then there are for multifamily, which I know we're going to get into. We haven't launched the multifamily portion of this program yet. The plan is to have that launched sometime this summer. But the maximum multifamily rebate would be up to $14,000 a unit for here, based on all those items that you see there on the right for here. Just to give you another view of the homes measures, these are all the items, and we have a whole materials and installation guide to help you as far as what types of furnaces or air conditioners are eligible for the program. But this gives you the general homes measures, kind of your typical energy efficiency measures that you'd find through most utility programs, for example, or the weatherization assistance program. On the here side, as I mentioned, that chart before, this kind of lays it out between the low income and moderate income, and you can see how those amounts go from full payment out to half payment for the moderate income rebate, up to 50% of that job. And yeah, just more details on those measures. And okay. And so, so it's been mentioned a few times that this is focused on disadvantaged communities. The program offers an additional incentive for work performed in these areas that goes directly to the contractor, in addition to those rebate amounts. And it's a maximum of up to $500, depending on what measures were installed in that household, and if they leveraged here incentives or homes incentives. But just additional incentive for contractors for participating in the program and working in these communities that are most in need. And again, maximum project incentive is $500 per unit. So I'm going to talk to you just briefly about the contractor journey. Some of the details, I know Jason went through that customer journey, a little bit of overlap here, but gets into a little more of the details on the contractor side. So we mentioned before, once the contractor meets those program requirements, submits that registration, you go ahead and then complete the training that's required. Once you've completed that training, we'd go in and we'd go ahead and approve you as a trade ally. You'd then appear on the Find a Contractor tool that's on the program website. So when the customer first gets qualified, they receive an award letter that provides that information as far as what level of rebates that they have access to. That customer then has access to that contractor lookup tool. And so in most cases right now, since we've had over 3,000 people go ahead and get qualified on the website, we've had a lot of customers reaching out to contractors to start these projects. And so the way they're going to find you is on that Find a Contractor tool on the website. And that is for primary contractors only at this time. So customers are only seeing the primary contractors to start the projects. From there, we highly recommend that you'd ask scheduling questions just to ensure there's no health and safety issues that are going to get in the way of performing the work. So we're talking about roof leaks or mold or water in the basement, maybe friable asbestos, things of that nature. Just trying to get out ahead of those as much as we can, just to eliminate the additional truck rolls. And then our program team can try to assist those customers with finding other resources to address health and safety needs before we can bring them back into the program. But assuming they pass those questions, the trade ally would go ahead and they'd schedule that assessment. Once that assessment is scheduled, you'd go out and assess the home. And then that home assessor is going to, and the primary contractor are going to assess, does this need to be a homes calibrated assessment, the BPI 2400, or is the customer just interested in potentially just the HERE upgrades, depending on the needs of the home, what the customer is interested in receiving, determining which path to go down, which rebates to have access to. If there are health and safety issues, it does become a walkaway. We have a walkaway evaluation form that you would fill out. That form would then be submitted to us, and we provide a reimbursement for that, which I'll go over on a future slide here. But assuming we move forward with the project, then you would create a project proposal with a resident signature, and that would be submitted to our team, which we talked about before. And we review that scope of work. We pull in other sources if we need to braid other sources of funding on these rebates, and we would approve that project to move forward. Once that's approved, then again, trade out, you would complete the project and submit for the rebate request, which Jason covered. And then EGLE would pay out within 30 days on those rebates. So that is the overview of the contractor journey. Pretty straightforward process. I think the main thing there is just that assessment piece. And then also the QA/QC, sorry, I forgot to mention that. It's 100% of the first 5 jobs, 25% of the next 10 jobs, and then at minimum, it's going to be 5% thereafter. The QA/QC parameters are subject to change based on what we're finding in the field, but that is how we have them set up at this point in time. So I mentioned the home assessment for BPI 2400 that would need to be required to access the homes rebates. Currently, the following software solutions are approved by EGLE, that's SnugPro, Optimizer, and PSD. At this time, those are the preferred and those are the only approved software solutions. What we've seen so far is most contractors are leveraging SnugPro. It seems to be the one that most of them have either used before, or it's the one that they just have found easiest to use and engage with. But you could also access either Optimizer or PSD. Um, yeah, a few more details on the home assessment here. So the homes model assessment does require the 12 months of utility data. At this time, we are providing a $400 compensation for the homes modeled assessment. On the here side, it's an uncalibrated energy assessment. It doesn't require that PPI 2400 component. It doesn't require the same level of certification for the assessor conducting that assessment. Again, we also request that there's 12 months utility data for that project. Utility impact bill analysis is required if a heat pump is being installed or heat pump water heater when there's fuel switching involved, just to better detail what those bill impacts could be for the customer. The last thing we're trying to do with this program is increase the energy burden for these households, and so we want to ensure that customers are aware that if they do install a heat pump and they're moving fuels, for example, from a furnace to a heat pump, that there may be some bill impacts. And so that's a tool that we provide to contractors, that bill analysis to help support the work. And the HERE assessments receive $250 in compensation. And then the walkaway assessments that I touched on briefly with that walkaway evaluation form, we provide $125 compensation for those homes that don't end up moving forward with rebates. Touched on the walkaway situations briefly before, but typically these are severe health and safety hazards, exposed electrical wiring, any sort of obviously gas leaks. I'd say the ones we find most common are going to be roof repair issues, water in the basement, mold, asbestos, things of that nature. Possibly you have a customer who's just not cooperative or maybe hostile, any sort of unsafe conditions. Want to ensure that you all are safe, that the customers are safe. All these would be considered these walkaway situations, and as such, there'd be that walkaway evaluation form to fill out, and hopefully we can find them other resources to address these needs at the house. As Julie touched on earlier, we are committed to encouraging and supporting contractors with recycling the right materials to the right places. And so currently we have a materials recycling pledge that all contractors are required to sign off on, pledging that they're going to make waste reduction and recycling a part of the daily professional routine, educating staff, colleagues, vendors, and clients on the importance of waste reduction and recycling, recycle or donate appliances with refrigerants removed and disposed of appropriately, work with clients to use their available municipal recycling programs to keep materials out of landfills, and put the right materials in client curbside recycling carts or community drop-off centers. And we're in the process of building up more resources to help you all, help all the contractors better engage with recycling on these projects. In addition, we have program support throughout. So we have BPI certified staff to assist contractors throughout project completion. We have building science consultants throughout the 10 EGLE districts that are there to support you, to assist with any questions you have. I mentioned before, we have the weekly roundtable. We've added additional office hour sessions for any questions. And just making sure that contractors have as much support as possible in this program. We understand that there's a lot of nuance to this program. It's a new program, and it takes a little more support. And so we're there to provide that support for all of you. This is a map of currently where contractors are located. Those who have registered as of the 20th, so as of yesterday. You can see where the gaps are, where we have additional need. We're certainly looking for more contractors up in the UP. Also looking for more contractors. I mean, really statewide, but the UP specifically across the middle and upper lower peninsula, and just trying to build out as many of the trades as we can, and building out more home energy assessors as well. We're also looking to provide training resources for contractors so that they can become BPI certified if that's something you have interest in. And we're consistently finding opportunities for contractors so that they can engage with the program. These are the points of contact for contractors, specifically the MiHER contractor at WMEnergy.com, and then the general program for any questions is myenergyrebates@clearresult.com, and the phone number is listed there. The QR code, if you're able to scan that with your phone, that takes you right to EGLE's website to learn more and to register. There's a whole section there on contractors, and that's where you'd start the registration process if you're interested in participating in the program, which we hope you are, because there's lots of work to be done, lots of customers out there. And I think with that, that is my final slide. I'll kick it over to you, Grace and David.
Yeah, great. Want to thank you, Julie and Jason and David. I'm David Gard. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Energy Efficiency Contractors Association. And we're really excited about this program and what it provides as opportunity for our members. And what we're going to do now is take the balance of the hour to go through some of the really good questions that have already been asked. And just so for consistency and for completeness, I know many of you can probably see some of the answers that have already been written into the Q&A feature, but we're going to go through each one just in case people are listening in and don't have access to that, or for people later on listening to the recording, so everyone will have the benefit of hearing all of the questions and answers. So let me start, if I can, with a couple of questions that went into the chat earlier on. And this will be open to anyone who wants to jump in. So the first question, do you anticipate the federal budget cuts to EPA and DOE to affect the MiHER program?
So right now, this is a little bit of an unknown, right? So right now, the federal government is going through the budget reconciliation process, where they're kind of going through the budget. It's going through the different committees where they're recommending, program increases or program decreases, depending on, kind of what the priorities are. What we've seen in some of the early documentation is this program has not been cut from their proposed budget, but again, that has to go through the whole approval process. So for right now, the program is active. We have full access to our funding, and the early indicators is that this program will continue. Talk to your legislator and your representatives if you want to ensure that it stays.
All right, the same person asked another question. Since Energy Star is embedded in the home performance industry at all levels, what's your assessment of what might happen? Is there a pivot plan if Energy Star is sunsetted?
So the guidance that we've gotten from DOE is currently mute on the point. They're waiting for that clarification before they would provide guidance to us on how it would impact the program. And then as federal recipients, we would have to adhere to the new program changes. Ultimately, the goal of this program is to improve energy efficiency and electrification, right? We're trying to reduce energy consumption, kind of reducing that burden on the grid. So we're still going to be trying to target energy efficient appliances in order to reduce the energy burden.
All right,
But
thanks,
again,
Julie.
we're going to wait for what DOE tells us we have to do.
Great. I'm going to shift over now to the Q&A feature. There have been a few questions that have already been asked and answered, but let's just review those. Will slides or recording be available after the session? The answer is yes. A recording of this webinar will be available soon. And if you've registered for this webinar, we'll send a link directly to you. Question about what about Flint? Is there allocation for smaller communities or only the cities that were listed on the slides earlier for each region? And Julie has answered that Flint is in District 4 and the funding allocation is to the region district, not a specific city. So
Correct.
everyone should be covered. Another question that was already answered. Can a homeowner install their own water heater and receive the rebate? And the answer is no. The rebate eligible work must be done by an approved MiHER contractor. So that's why it's important to get registered for the program if you want to participate.
David, can I expand on that a little bit? So,
Certainly.
yeah, so part of the reason on why we want to have the work done with an approved MiHER contractor is twofold primarily. One is it ensures that we reserve the rebate for that particular homeowner, right? So the homeowner applies, we identify what upgrades are for the home and what their rebate amount is projected to be, and then the work is completed, right? So if a homeowner were to just go out and purchase a piece of equipment or whatever and then install it without letting us know, there's a potential where we wouldn't have, them earmarked or reserved for that rebate. We could run out of funding, depending on the timing of when this happens in the program. And it also ensures that work is done by a certified professional, right? Somebody who can ensure that we can take advantage of any program warranty or product warranties. We're really targeting the most at-risk population in the state, right? Our low-income residents, right? And you all work with this equipment, stuff breaks, right? So we want to ensure that we can take advantage of those product warranties, and that's partly done through using certified professionals.
Great. Thanks for that additional information. And somewhat related to this as a follow-up. So just to clarify the process, the homeowner hires and pays for the work. The contractor applies for the rebate, and the homeowner then receives the rebate. Is that a correct statement of the process?
No, nope. So the goal of this program, right? Again, if we're targeting low income residents, they don't have this free capital, right? They don't have this in their budget to pay for this work up front and then receive a rebate. So the way that we've designed the program is the resident applies, they select their contractor goes and does the work. The contractor submits the invoice to Clear Results slash the state. We pay the contractor directly. For those residents that are in the income range that requires the 50% rebate amount, they would then be responsible for the remaining portion. So the contractor would submit the invoice, we pay the 50% portion, and then the resident would be responsible for paying the contractor for the remaining 50%. We are in the process of working on additional financial assistance in terms of like working with Michigan Saves or other, loan options that might be available for residents to help cover that 50%, because we know that even our moderate income residents will have a challenge funding some of these projects.
All right, we've got a good solid list of questions here, so we're just going to run down this list and get to as many of these as we can. Starting at the top, can contractors with a business address in Wisconsin participate in the program as a primary contractor? And I'll let anyone take that.
David, do you want to take it?
I was, yeah. So focus on Michigan contractors, but yes, our bordering states, we are allowing to participate in this program as well, Wisconsin and Ohio at this time.
Essentially, they have to be eligible to do business in Michigan. We're really wanting to ensure that we're building up the Michigan workforce for this program.
Does it matter if they hire Michigan people, but they're based elsewhere?
Like if they're based outside of Wisconsin or Ohio.
Yeah.
At this time, we're just allowing those with addresses, business locations in Wisconsin, Ohio, and Michigan to the program.
Okay. Can contractors choose to only support HERE rebates? And a follow-up that I'll add to that is if a contractor wants to do both, do you have to register for both, or you just register once? So can you just do one or the other? And if you want to do both, is there any difference in registration?
It's one contractor registration for the program, but when they submit for the rebates, they'd be submitting two different proposals. So if they have a project and with that project they're looking at rebates from both homes and here, they would submit two proposals, two scopes of work, one for homes and one for here. If the project is only looking for here rebates and that's all the customer is interested in, yeah, then certainly they could just submit proposals for the here side of the program and not homes, and vice versa with homes and not here.
And
Okay.
I will expand on that just a little bit, right? So from the customer's perspective, it's one program. It's just the home energy rebate program. We're not going into the nitty-gritty of, well, this one's homes and this one's here, and which one do you want? We're wanting to make the upgrades that are appropriate for that home. So we don't want contractors to say, well, I'm only going to do the uncalibrated assessment and only participate in the HERE program. That's the only one I want to do. We want you to assess the home and make the assessment based off of what the house needs, right? And then choose the appropriate program. So if you feel like your skills are only geared towards more the HERE program, then this is where we would encourage you to partner with some other contractors in order to make sure that we're effectively working on the homes in the way that they need it.
Okay. The next question, do contractors have to use a DOE-approved BPI 2400 software for the uncalibrated energy assessment? Dave, I know you had a slide on this topic, so why don't you highlight that answer?
Sure, yeah. For the uncalibrated energy assessment, they do not need to use a DOE approved BPI 2400 software for that.
Okay. I think this might have already been covered as well, but let's um, address this one. How can this program work with the weatherization program?
Yeah, so we've been working really closely with DHHS throughout program design and our pilot and through implementation. We meet almost on a weekly basis, if not through chats or emails, we have dedicated time as well. The main goal that we're looking at, the way to combine these programs, and there are federal regulations that we have to follow and abide by, right? We can't, there's rules that DOE put in place that basically doesn't allow the homes portion, the 50121, to work well with weatherization. However, we're looking at weatherization basically being a clear pathway to the 50122 or the HERE program, right? So we're looking at implementing that as kind of like a separate pathway for those clients that they can just jump right in because they'll already have done an assessment through weatherization. So they would jump right to the electrification portion of the program.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that just a bit. We on June 3rd, we're having a like half day working session to really flesh out these pathways, provide like greater overall direction to the different WAP providers on ways to collaborate going forward. So as Julie mentioned, like we've had many meetings, but this next session I think will really help to solidify these pathways for a clear direction.
Okay. For those of you who are in the webinar today and you happen to miss it, Grace put in the chat some contact information, which will also be on the slides. And there's another chat question that I'll ask. What is involved in the MiHER energy assessment? And can we get a copy of it?
Yeah, I can speak to this. So a MiHER energy assessment simply is an energy assessment aligned with BPI 1100 and BPI 1200 standards. Essentially, what that means is we are going to, a certified energy auditor is going to go into the home and essentially do an evaluation of health and safety conditions. We're going to look at energy efficiency improvements, um, do some diagnostic testing to prove some assumptions that we may make during that assessment. And the assessment really should be, like I mentioned before, aligned with BPI 11 and 1200 standards. Those standards lay out specifically how an energy assessment should be conducted, how diagnostic testing should be conducted, how the flow of an energy assessment should be conducted. This is why it's extremely important for our contractors to um, explore, possibly getting a BPI certified individual on your staff. Um, because to perform an energy assessment, you do have to have one of our required certifications, a BPI certification, specifically a building analyst professional certification, ResNet certification. You can be a Luina auditor. There's several certifications that could qualify to do that. But as far as guidance goes for the energy assessment, we recommend aligning with the BPI 11 and 1200 standards.
All right, thank you, Jason. There are a couple questions related to utility bill estimates. Let me start with what happens when a homeowner has been in their home for less than a year and cannot provide 12 months usage?
I can speak to that as well. So currently, right now, we are requesting that a customer has 12 months of utility data. It is a requirement for the homes program, but there may be situations where, a customer is only in the home for 9 months, or maybe they've only been in the home for 2 months. We are currently working. There is DOE guidance that we have to provide alternative routes for energy modeling in homes with less than 12 months of utility data. Essentially, those are assumption estimates times a realization rate that may be, you know, speaking a foreign language to some of you. However, uh, there is an opportunity for us to do that. Right now, we are requiring the 12 months of utility bills. Moving forward, that is subject to change.
All right, and another question on utility bill estimates. Is there a preferred recommended methodology for calculating these? Is there a specific document template contractors should be using?
So I can speak to that one. I think for the utility bill impact analysis, we are working to develop a tool that all contractors will be able to use to try to make this as like streamlined and easy on the contractor as possible to obtain this impact analysis. Hoping to have that tool available, I would say hopefully by mid-June. Um, in addition to that, there's a standard form that the customer would sign off on, recognizing that there may be some bill impacts from electrifying as well, and that's a standard form that we have made available for all contractors.
All right. Continuing down the list of questions that have been submitted here. As a primary contractor, should we go out to the customer's home before the energy auditor? They don't have an energy auditor on staff, or can we ask questions to assess?
Um, I can speak, and Jason, you might have thoughts too on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly ask questions, I think, to assess if you feel like there's a need to be on premise before that energy assessment is conducted. I think what we've seen is that in most cases, the primary contractors are coordinating that home energy assessment with a supporting contractor or another primary contractor that conducts assessments, potentially, being on site for that, or at least just leaning on that contractor for conducting the assessment to identify those needs that kind of Julie mentioned to help guide what those rebate pathways would look like for that customer. So I think each home I think could be fairly unique. But I think in most cases, the PC may not be on site for that home assessment. That's conducted by another contractor. But Jason, feel free to chime in.
No, I've got nothing to add, David. You covered that really well.
Thank you.
All right, the next question regards recycling protocol. Is there a protocol or an example of what can be recycled and where? I know, David, you had mentioned in your discussion that this is something you're putting resources together for. So is there anything you can add or maybe suggest when more information might be available?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, we mentioned the pledge that's currently available for contractors, and we're in the process of building out those resource guides. So we have a first draft right now that's been under review by internal teams here, Walker Miller and Clear Result, and then we have another meeting tomorrow to take that feedback and try to put forth a draft of what these resources could look like for contractors. Um, so I don't have a firm date on when we expect that to be available. But if I had to guess, we're targeting sometime by, I would say, the end of June.
Okay. I'm going to jump over to the chat and read this comment. If we are BPI certified through the DTE Walker Miller program, are there additional courses we need to take for the qualification?
David, I'll let you speak to that. I'm not sure what certifications Walker Miller requires.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure on the EA side what they're requiring right now for certifications for BPI. But if they've received BPI certification, the building analyst professional through that program, then that would be applicable. Would be my take on that. If it's anything less than that, they might have to take additional training to get up to that building analyst professional certification.
Okay. And just a reminder for anybody who has questions that aren't fully answered today, we've got contact information available in the chat. They'll be with the slides, and you can certainly go to the program website and find your way pretty easily to people who can help you. back to the questions here. What controls are in place to prevent contractors from pushing heat pumps and appliances only when there are other needs for the home, such as insulation? And the person asks, shouldn't these measures, that is, heat pumps and appliances, only be made available to those who already have sufficient insulation levels?
Yeah, I can speak to that really quick. So there's a couple different things that we have in place to address this. First is our messaging. We do through the MiHER program, especially the homes program, we prioritize weatherization measures. So especially on a homes project, we are looking to air seal the home. We are looking to insulate the home. We are looking to make sure it has correct ventilation. Um, totally agree. A heat pump in a home with 2 inches of insulation in the attic probably is going to overwork and increase the customer's billing. So we absolutely, as contractors, need to have those difficult conversations sometimes with customers. Sometimes customers, you go into a home and they're going to want brand new windows, and that's really why they called you. Unfortunately, that may not be realistic. We have to meet that 20% total energy savings at least for a homes project, and that's just not really going to get us there. Generally, what we've found is insulation, air sealing, and HVAC gets us to that 20%. In addition to messaging, we also have pretty stringent, mentioned before, quality assurance verifications. So we do have, we are reviewing projects upon submission for the proposal. We are reviewing projects on submission for payment, and are doing on-site verifications of what was installed, but also the energy modeling included. There are a lot of barriers, and we are dedicated to address these as they come up. But we are asking specifically for the homes program that we do prioritize air sealing and insulation, any weatherization.
All right, great. I've got my eye on the clock and we only have a few more minutes. So let me try to finish up with a couple of, I think, what should be short ones here. Jason mentioned diagnostic testing. What specific diagnostic testing will be required to be performed?
Absolutely. Specifically, during an energy assessment, we're going to look to do a combustion safety analysis. So essentially, that is doing a spillage test, a carbon monoxide test, testing for any gas leaks in the home. Um, Essentially, we're trying to make sure that what when we do an installation in the home, is that going to affect the air pressure, the ventilation, and the air quality of the home? So that would be one form of diagnostic testing that we would do. Another form of diagnostic testing that we could possibly do during an assessment would be a blower door test. Essentially, we're going to depressurize the home at 50 pascals, and that's going to show us how much air exchange is happening in the home. That test specifically is going to show us an amount of air leakage in the home and give us a baseline to work off of to make a reduction. So those are two specific tests that may be performed. Also, if you guys have FLIR guns or thermal imaging cameras, that could also be a diagnostic test implemented. But those are the general testings that would need to be required.
All right, and that honestly takes us to the last minute here, so we need to close this out. I want to thank all of our program experts today, their knowledge and their information. They're here to help you, and finding them is not a hard thing to do. So make sure you reach out to them with any remaining questions that you have. I also want to thank everyone for attending and note that we plan to have more of these kinds of webinars to help contractors as the program evolves and we learn more about things that we want to share so that it makes the whole process easier for you. So stay tuned for details on future webinars in this series. And again, we'll send the link to this webinar to everybody who's registered today. Grace, I will turn it back to you.
Yeah, David honestly covered everything. Again, I'll reiterate thank you to all of our program experts and thank you so much for joining today. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks all.